सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं कर्वावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Om Namah Shivaya.
Namah Shivaya.
Namah Shivaya.
Tanmay, could you please chant from the 14th mantra to the end of the Valli?
Uttishta Jagrata.
Uttishthata
Jagrata.
Prapya Varani Bodhata.
Prapya Varani Bodhata.
Shurasya Dhara Nishita Duratyaya.
Shurasya Dhara Nishita Duratyaya.
Durgam Pathastat Kavayo Vadanti.
Durgam Pathastat Kavayo Vadanti.
Ashabdam Asparsham Arupam Avyayam.
Ashabdam Asparsham Avyayam.
Tatharasan Nityam Agandhavachayat.
Tatharasan Nityam Gandhavachayata.
Anadyanantam Mahatah Param Dhruvam.
Anadyanantam Mahatah Param Dhruvam.
Nichaya Tanmrityumukhat Pramuchyate.
Nichaya Tanmrityumukhat Pramuchyate.
Nachiketam Upakhyanam.
Nachiketam Upakhyanam.
Mrityuproktagam Sanatanam.
Mrityuproktagam Sanatanam.
Uktva Shrutva Cha Medhavi.
Uktva Shrutva Cha Medhavi.
Brahmaloke Mahiyate.
Brahmaloke Mahiyate.
Ya imam paramam guhyam.
Imam Paramam Guhyam.
Shravayet Brahma Samsadi.
Shravayet Brahma Samsade.
Prayata Shraddha Kaleva.
Prayatashraddhakaleva.
Tadanantyaya Kalpate.
Tadanantyaya kalpate.
Tadanantyaya Kalpata iti.
Tadanantyaya kalpata iti.
Iti Prathamodhyaya Tritiya Valli Sampurnam.
Iti Tritiyavali Sampurnam. Okay, so now we are nearing the end of the Prathamadhyaya Tritiya Valli, first chapter. Valli is a section, third section. And this mantra is a very famous quotation, which is often quoted by whom? Anybody? Very, very famous. Okay, it's associated with Swami Vivekananda. He used to quote this very often. So, Uttishtaha, arise, get up. Jagrataha, awake. So, two things, awake and then get up. Then Prapya Varan. So, Varan here means the wise ones, the Jnanis. So, Prapya Varan. Prapya normally means attain, but here is, you can take it in the meaning of approach. So, approach the great ones, the Jnanis. And what should you do? Nebodhata. So, Atma, Nebodhata. You should know the Atma. Nebodhata is to know. So, you should know that Atma. And Kavayaha Vadanti. Kavayaha, Kavi is another name for Jnani, wise people. So Kavayaha Vadanti, the wise people say that Tat Patha, that path of Atma Jnanam, Durgam, is very difficult to walk on, and they compare it to Nishita Dhara, a very sharp edge, Shurasya, of a razor, of a blade. So Nishita Dhara Shuryasya, it is like the sharp edge of a blade, and Duratyaya, because of that, it is very, very difficult to walk on that, because walking on the sharp edge of a blade is, as you know, difficult. That is a comparison. So Shruti is admitting here, Yamaraj is admitting that Jnana Yoga is the most difficult part of our spiritual journey. And he says, Kavayaha Vadanti, all the rishis, all the Jnanis, they are aware of that. And they do talk about it. They say that Jnana Yoga is a very difficult path. Durgam Pathatha, that path is difficult. So Patha here is Jnana Yoga Marga, the path of Jnana Yoga. And Durgam means Dukkhena Gamyam, that which is walked with difficulty. And if you remember Bhagavad Gita, Klesho Adhigata Rastesham, says Krishna. It's very difficult. The path of those people who walk on the path of Jnanam is difficult. Shurasya Dhara Eva, like the sharp edge of a sword. So Shura is a sword or a blade. Dhara is a sharp edge. And he further says Nishita. Nishita is sharpening. So as it is, the razor's edge is sharp. And Nishita, it has been sharpened. And therefore, Duratyaya, it is difficult to walk up that. The path of Jnana Yoga is just as difficult. So Nishita here can have a double meaning. You can take it as the type of the mind, the buddhi, the intellect required to come to Jnanam. So a razor sharp intellect, like this, like the edge of a razor's blade. That sharp intellect you should have. And what should you do? Because Jnana Yoga is difficult, many people, they look for easier paths. So people say Japa is sufficient, Nama Kirtanam is sufficient. People say Bhakti Yoga is sufficient. Just say Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, that is sufficient. These are all methods of people who do not want to spend the energy or just do not have the intellect to come to Jnana Yoga. It doesn't mean anything is wrong with these people. It just means that they are not yet ready for Jnanam. And instead of admitting that and saying that, okay, I am not ready and therefore let me prepare myself, they discard Jnanam completely and they go on other paths. So this is not acceptable in the Shastram. So for Jnana Yoga, there is no alternative path at all. Because where ignorance is the problem, the solution has to be what? Removal of that ignorance. And that is Jnanam only. Right? So like if I don't know what time my train leaves, there is only one solution, right? I have to look at a timetable and get knowledge of when the train leaves. If I do japa, will it help? No. If I do now Rama Kirtanam, will it help? No. All these subsidiary disciplines will enable sadhana chatusthaya, chitta shuddhi. But ajnanam, ignorance, can be dispelled only by jnanam, by knowledge. So if Jnana Yoga is difficult, then how to make it easy? You have to make it easy. Nothing in life is really difficult for a prepared person. For an unprepared person, everything is difficult. Everything is impossible to do. But for a person who has prepared himself, nothing is really impossible. So the ease or the difficulty level with which I am faced at any point in my life all depends upon my level of preparation. Like the gymnast, the pole vaultist. If you have seen in the Olympic Games, the pole vault, it's so effortlessly he flows past. He goes up, he takes the pole, he digs into the ground, he's carried by the pole. At the right moment, he drops the pole, and it looks so absolutely effortless. But that effortlessness has been backed by years and years of grueling practice. And that is why they say that true skill is always effortless, which is to be understood as true skill always looks effortless. It's not really effortless. It's got all the backing of all the preparation. And therefore, Yamraj here says, Uthishta. Literal meaning is get up. And you can awake. So you can take it as that don't continue to sleep in this ignorance. And there is a reason for comparing it to sleep. Why? Because when we are in deep sleep, the sleep does not produce any problem. Right? If you're in deep sleep, the sleep itself does not produce any problem. But the problems are caused by what? When you are frightened in your sleep, it's not the sleep that has produced the problem. It is the dream which has caused the fright. And the dream is not the sleep. The dream is the product of the sleep. The consequence of the sleep, the karyam of the sleep, that karyam is what causes problem. And the similar comparison is made with ignorance. Ignorance itself is not a problem. But the product of ignorance, which is samsara, that is the problem. And that causes the problems. Because if ignorance itself causes problems, then in Sushupti Avastha, you should be having only problems. But Sushupti Avastha, your mind is not there. So the product of the deep sleep, which is samsara, is not available. And therefore, you have no problem. So Shankara says here that Uthishta has to mean get prepared. Get your mind ready with the appropriate sadhana. So take to karma yoga, take to upasana yoga, get jnana yogyata, get chitta shuddhi, become a sadhana chatushtaya sampannaha, and then jagrata, wake up. Wake up to your higher nature. So jagrata here has to mean once having prepared yourself with karma yoga and jnana yoga, may you wake up to your higher nature. So may you follow jnana yoga. And very often people say that jnana yoga I have read. So I have people who have told me that I have gone through the entire Brahma Sutras. And this gentleman has never touched the Bhagavad Gita or touched Upanishads, and yet he has gone through the entire Brahma Sutras. He says, the point is, how much of the Brahma Sutra has actually gone through him, that has to be debated. And therefore, one should never enter Jnana Yoga independent of a teacher. And so he says, Yamraj himself says this, Prapya Varan, go to a wise person, go to a teacher, Nibodhata, and that wise person will teach you Atma Jnana. So the first rule in Shastram is, we have repeated it time and again and again. We have seen it in Bhagavad Gita also. Never attempt independent study. It's a futile exercise. This path of Jnanam should be walked along only with the help of the Shastram as interpreted by a teacher. So Guru Shastra Upadeshena. That is the only way to get onto the path of Jnana. So Varan here literally means Shreshtaha, the wise person. And we can interpret it as a teacher who is Brahmanishtra and Srotriya. He should have learned under a teacher. He should be aware of the various prakriyas, the various models of teaching. And he himself must also be Brahmanishtra, established in Brahman. Only if both the conditions are satisfied can he be a successful teacher. And having gone to them, Nebodhata, may you know, may you get moksha. So this is the mantra where Yamraj is telling Nachiketas, this is the way that Atma Jnanam is to be achieved. The next mantra is a very famous one. This is as close to the definition as you can get of Brahman. Brahman, we say, is beyond words. It cannot really be defined. But these are all lakshanam, indicators. And through these indicators, one has to understand what is Brahman. So all of them are more or less in the form of negations. That you must carefully note. Everything is negation over there. You really don't have any positive quality being talked about because Brahman is attributeless, nirguna. So you cannot talk about a quality. You can talk about absence of qualities. And so he says yat. So that yat is there in the second line of the mantra. That yat means this Brahman. Then you go to the first line, ashabdam, has no sound. Sound is negated, cannot talk. Asparsham, has no touch, cannot be touched. Arupam, has no form or no color. Both rupam can be taken as form and color, so has no form and no color. Arasam, has no taste. Agandhavat, has no smell. Anadi, has no beginning. Anantam, has no end. Tatha avyayam, is without decay. Vayam is decay, so avyayam, without decay. Nityam is eternal, is without death. Dhruvam, does not change. Param Mahata, it's beyond Mahat. Mahat here is Hiranyagarbha, it is beyond Hiranyagarbha itself. And Nichaya, Nichaya means having clearly understood, having clearly known, having clearly understood Tat. So the Tat here has to be connected to the Yat of the second line. So Tat, having known that Brahman, what happens? Mrityu mukhat pramuchyate. Pramuchyate means one is freed from mrityu mukhat, literally from the jaws of death, from the mouth of death. So here now, remember all this has been talked about. And this is the summarization of the entire Prathama Adhyaya, entire first chapter. So in the next 3 verses, Yamaraj is summarizing the teaching. So these are the concluding verses of the first chapter. And this particular mantra is one of the most important mantras of this Upanishad. In fact, of all Upanishads, these kind of mantras are the most important because they cover 3 topics. Atma Lakshanam, that is the first topic, the nature of Atma. Atma Lakshanam or Atma Swarupam, the nature of Atma. The second one is Atma Jnanam, and the third one is Atma Jnana Phalam. So 3 things. Lakshanam, Jnanam, Phalam. So Atma Jnana, Lakshanam is the first topic, the nature of Atma. This Anatma, this Panchakosha. So when you talk about Atma, since there are no positive attributes, no gunas that you can describe, you do the neti neti. You talk about things which are not Atma. So this Panchakosha has to be understood as what? Neither I or neither me nor mine. Not me, not mine. 2 things. No ahankara, no mamakara. So I am different from the koshas. Why? Because I am aware of the koshas. All the koshas are in my range of awareness, which means they are all objects of my experience. And therefore, I cannot be the Panchakoshas because whatever I know, whatever I experience, that I cannot be. That is different from me. That's one of the first rules of logic in Vedanta. Whatever I experience, because I am saying I experience something, I is different, and the something which I experience is different. Therefore, if I am experiencing the koshas, they are all objects which I am experiencing, and therefore I am not the koshas. And if I am not the koshas, what am I? I am the Chaitanyam, the Sakshi, the consciousness principle witness, you might say, the consciousness witness. So the nature of that consciousness is being described here. Okay. The first description is that you are free from all attributes. The entire mantra means that you are a formless principle, free from all attributes. Your body has a form. but you are the witness of the body. You are nirgunam, and therefore he says ashabdam, without any sound. Asparsham, cannot be touched. Arupam, no boundaries, no colors. Why? Because even very akasha, the space, is located within you. We think of space as infinite, but Shastram says that infinite space also is within you only. You are the very substratum of that space. Then arasam, tasteless. Agandhavat, no bad smell, no good smell, without any smell at all. You put them all together, these five together, what is happening? Atma is indriya agocharam, not perceivable by the five sense organs. And then avyayam. Avyayam is without decay. So in Tattva-bodha terms, apakshaya rahitaha, free from apakshaya, free from decay. Then nityam, eternal. Again, nityam, if you correlate to the Tattva-bodha, it is marana rahitaha, the last Shadvikara, Maranam, that is also being negated here. Then Anadi, without beginning. So Shankara here explains Anadi. Shankaracharya in his commentary says, Adi has to be taken as the Karanam, the cause. And therefore Anadi has to be taken as Karana Rahitam, without cause. This causeless. So Anadi we take as beginning, but Shankara says take it as causeless. There not being a cause of anything. And Anantam. Anantam, again Shankara, Anantam is taken as endless normally. So Anadi Anantam means having no beginning, no end. But on the same lines as before, Shankara comments, Antaha should be taken as the Karyam, the product. And therefore Anadi Anantaha has to be taken as that which has no Karyam and that which has no product. So Karya, Karana, Vilakshanam, beyond cause and effect. Atma does not come from anything and nothing comes from Atma. So Atma does not come from anything. We are easily able to accept because we have been studying that all the time. But when you say nothing comes from Atma, that becomes difficult to digest because we say that Ishvara is the creator. But we must remember that this Karanam and Karyam, cause and product, exists only in the material plane, exists only in Vyavaharika, exists only where Maya is there, where Prakriti is there. And Maya alone can be the cause, and Maya alone can be the effect. And therefore, Atma, which is the very substratum for Maya, that is a non-material spiritual principle. That is Karya, Karana, Vilakshana. You have to understand that Maya itself is dependent upon Atma and therefore cannot be counted. If Maya we do not count as separate from Atma, Maya we do not count as equal to Atma only. That is why it's called Anirvachaniyam, which cannot be described at all, which cannot be classified at all. The next word is Param Mahataha. So Mahata here is Samashti Shukshma Shariram or Samashti Vijnanamaya Kosha, which translates into Samashti Shukshma Shariram, which translates into Hiranyagarbha. So beyond Hiranyagarbha it is. This is beyond Hiranyagarbha. This particular principle, Atma, is beyond Hiranyagarbha. Now there is another word called Dhruvam. Dhruvam again means changeless. Okay, so here, what is the other word here? Nityam also means deathless. Death is a change. But Nityam also can be taken as changeless. And Shankara makes a point that there are, whenever you talk about Nityam, eternal, there are two things which are eternal. What are they? One is Atma, is eternal. And one is Anatma, which is also eternal. Why is Anatma eternal? Atma eternal, yes, easy to understand. But Anatma, why is Anatma eternal?
Matter can never be destroyed.
Matter can never be destroyed. It only changes form. We saw this in Bhagavad Gita, second chapter. We also know Einstein's equation, E is equal to mc squared. Matter only changes forms. It can never be destroyed. So they say that even the Lord cannot produce 1 ounce of matter. Whatever is there in the universe is there. It continuously changes form. And therefore, what is the difference? So matter is eternal, but continuously changing. Consciousness is eternal, but does not change at all. And therefore, Shankara says there are 2 nityams always. One is continuously changing. So he calls it apekshikam nityam, relatively eternal. And one is kuthastham nityam, changelessly eternal. So there are 2 nityams. One is changingly eternal and one is changelessly eternal. And therefore, dhruvam nityam means that which is kuthastham nityam, that which does not change at all, changelessly eternal. Okay.
Acharya, I have a question.
Yes, please.
What is this term kutastha? We've come across it many times, including in the Bhagavad Gita, and I will be very honest that I really haven't understood the complete meaning.
Kutha is an anvil. You know, the thing on which, the guy who works, what is it called? Works the iron, the blacksmith. You want to make a sword or you want to make anything, you have to heat up that piece of iron and then he hammers it, right? Old days. Now, of course, those things are gone. But in the earlier days, if you wanted to make a knife, you would go to the blacksmith and then he would take an iron rod, put it in the fire, and then he would heat the iron rod till it becomes red hot. And then he would take a hammer and hit the iron rod till it flattens out into the shape of a knife. Now, what does he place it on? He places it on a nice thick piece of metal. That does not change at all. That is called kuthastham. The kutastha is the anvil itself. An anvil is changeless. Of course, all.
So what is it here? That is a limited explanation that we're giving with a physical anvil. What is it out here?
The kutastham here is changeless.
It means changeless.
Kutastha nityam.
Because
Changelessly.
because the word kuta means deception, to deceive, that which is untrue.
No, that is another word.
Okay.
Another kuta, that which is untrue means that which is not really, and here kutam means that which does not change. Kutam also has the meaning of deception, but that is not taken here. Here the kuta is a blacksmith's anvil.
Which is a blacksmith, which is an anatma example. So I'm trying to understand the term kuta because it is something that I've not understood.
Don't look at the meaning in the terms of deception.
Okay.
That meaning is also there.
Okay.
But another meaning for that, if you look at the dictionary, is that metal piece which the blacksmith uses to shape other metal pieces. While the other metal pieces change shape, the anvil cannot change shape.
Okay.
So that is why it's taken as changeless, that which does not change. It is in that meaning that he is saying kuthastha nityam, changelessly eternal, as against apekshika nityam, changingly eternal.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now, a question should have come when I said that Maya is changelessly eternal. What is the question?
Acharya, again, Atma is changelessly eternal and matter is changingly eternal.
Changingly eternal. So when I am saying that, but you are saying Maya is changingly eternal, but it is eternal. What is the question that should come up?
I think earlier we said that everything which is eternal is Satyam.
Well, if you remember, somewhere we have said that Atma is eternal, but Maya can be destroyed. In fact, many texts actually say destruction of Maya is moksha. And therefore, the question should be, how can we say that Maya is nityam when Maya can be ended? Because ending of Maya is basically ending the influence that Maya has on you. That is moksha.
Intellectual.
Exactly. And therefore, the answer to that question is what?
Seemingly destructive.
Yeah. Understanding see, the thing is, at this stage, you should use the correct words. Seemingly destroyed on is fine. We have to say correctly, mithyatvam of Maya should be understood. The mithyatvam of Maya should be understood. And how do you explain that? Supposing I go to, cafe coffee day, and cafe coffee days usually have big mirrors, right? All over the place. I don't know if you guys have been there, but they have mirrors on the walls. So in that mirror, I see myself also. But I don't order 2 cups of coffee. Why don't I order 2 cups of coffee? Because what I see is understood as not real. I see that my image is not me. And therefore, I understand. I order 2 cups of coffee in spite of my sense organs perceiving 2 of me. I order only 1 cup of coffee. It is the same thing here. You perceive Maya, but you know it is mithya. You don't count it, right? And therefore, that intellectual dismissal of the reality of the satyatvam of Maya, which is called Maya's mithyatvam nishchaya. So the technical word that's very often Shankara uses, mithyatva nishchaya, with clear understanding that this is mithya. That is called the destruction of Maya. Figuratively, it's only a gauna destruction, never real destruction. Right? So these first 3 lines of this mantra, they are talking about what? Atma Swarupam. Then comes Atma Jnanam. So Nishchaya, Nichchaya, that's the word. Nichchaya is basically Nishchaya Jnanam Prapya. Having clearly understood, that is the meaning of Nichchaya. Having clearly understood from where? Through Shravanam and Mananam. And understood as what? Understood as myself. So whenever I listen to Vedanta class, at the back of my mind, what is normally running? That, especially this particular mantra. What is the first thing you will say? What is this mantra? If I ask you, what will you say? What is the answer to that question? What is this mantra about?
Brahman.
Sorry?
Acharya, this particular one is are you talking about this particular
15. Ashabdam, asparsham, arupam, avyayam. What is that?
Brahma Lakshanam?
Brahman. Brahman.
Quality of Brahman.
So that exactly is what I'm saying. You should not think of if you listen to the class saying Brahma Lakshanam, you have failed.
Acharya, just repeating what you said, that it has 3 things: Brahma Lakshanam, Brahma Swarupam, and Brahma Atma Phalam.
Yeah, but if you listen to this class saying that you are listening to Brahma Lakshanam, you have failed completely.
I should say it's me, my Lakshanam.
You have to say, this is my Lakshanam. This class has to be understood as describing me. I am not separate from Brahman. Once you come to this particular idea, the mindset that Shastram is always describing me only, and you have taken a very valid, very solid step forward. Until then, Brahman is a second entity for you. It's an object. So that's what it means here. And how can this be got? Only through Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam. You know the story, right? For a sufficiently long period of time, under a competent Acharya, all these things have to be there. And once you get all this, so Nichchaya is about Atma Jnanam, my own knowledge, and Tat Mrityumukhat Pramuchate, that is the Jnana Phalam. Tat Mrityumukhat Pramuchate. That person who has undergone this process, who has understood himself as this, what is being referred to in the first 3 lines of the mantra, he knows that is his own description. For that person, he is freed from the jaws of Yama. Who is saying this? Yama himself. And therefore, this is freedom not only from death, it's freedom from the fear of Yama also. And this Yama fear, Yama bhayam, it expresses how? It expresses usually the sense of insecurity. about myself or about my family members, or also it expresses as fear of death. How is death going to come to me? Will it be, like that over in one shot, or will I be in ICU with all tubes sticking out of my body? All these are things which worry all of us, right? Most of us say that, let death come, let be fast. At least as you grow older, you are not afraid of death anymore. All you want, it should come quickly. So that is the thing. So that is one expression of bhayam, of the fear of Yamraj, is a sense of insecurity about yourself or your family members. The other is the fear of death. And the third one is the fear of punarjanma. How will I be born? Will I be born an insect? Will I be born with one leg or two legs? Will I be a caterpillar? You don't know, right? From all these fears, pramuchyate, the person is released. And this is moksha. With this, the main teaching is over. And next comes the glorification, the stuti, as they say. So the rest of it is stuti. So he says, Nachiketam upakhyanam mrityu proktam sanatanam uktva shrutva cha medhavi brahma loke mahiyate. So shrutva means having heard, and uktva, and repeating or speaking about it. About what? Upakhyanam sanatanam. Sanatanam upakhyanam. About this sanatana, upakhyanam is the explanation, the teaching. And therefore, sanatanam upakhyanam, about this eternal teaching, nachiketam. Nachiketam means which was received by Nachiketas. So here Nachiketam is second case. And there dvitiya vibhakti. Therefore, it is the object of the sentence. Therefore, Nachiketam means this teaching was received by Nachiketam, and mrityu proktam. Proktam means taught by, imparted by Mrityu, who is Lord Yama. So Lord Yama taught, and Nachiketas received this teaching. And therefore, Shrutvacha Uktva, hearing and talking about it, Medhavi, people who are got intellect, people who are discriminating people, Mahiyate Brahma Loke, they are glorified. Mahiyate means they are glorified. Brahma Loke means in Hiranyagarbha Loke, they are glorified. They become glorified in that particular loka. So, Upakhyanam means a dialogue or a teaching. And Nachiketam Mrityu Proktam, received by Nachiketam and having been given by Lord Yama, Sanatanam, this eternal teaching. Right? Why eternal? Because as long as Veda survives, this teaching will survive. Even when Pralayam comes, the teaching is not lost. Because when Hiranyagarbha wakes up, Brahmaji wakes up after Pralayam, or a new Brahmaji is born after Mahapralayam, the knowledge is still available with him. Just as my knowledge of today is not lost when I wake up tomorrow, and Brahmaji wakes up, that knowledge is not lost. Medhavi means Viveka, Viveki, Sadhana Chatushtaya, Sampanna Adhikari. To use Sattva-bodha, that is a Medhavi, a person who has got all the four qualifications. And Shrutva, hearing from a teacher, which means Shravanam and Mananam. Uktva cha. Now, Uktva cha means speaking about it. In this context, remember that I have always said that the best nididhyasanam is to teach. Because when you teach, you are forced to dwell upon every single word and understand it properly, so that you can teach properly, so that you can answer any questions which come up. For that, your understanding has to be crystal clear. And the best way of having that is teaching. Therefore, Uktva here has to be taken as teaching. And this can be formal teaching in a class, or it can be informal sharing with other sadhakas, other people who are interested. Okay. Note here that the first word in the mantra, second line, is Uktva, and the second word is Shrutva. Okay. So Uktva literally means to teach, and Shrutva which means to having heard. So here the order is reversed, because obviously you can't teach before you have learned. And therefore here we have to mentally understand that this has to be reversed for the purpose of my understanding. It should be Shrutva Uktva Cha. And there is a rule in Vedanta. Rule says that Arthakramaha means logical order. Patakramat Baliyan. Patakrama means the textual order, the order in which the words actually appear in the text. Right? So Arthakramaha Patakramat Baliyan. Baliyan here means stronger than or supersedes. So the rule says that the logical order in a text always has to supersede the textual order. What is the logic here? Uktva Shrutva cannot be correct, because unless you have Shrutva, how can you Uktva? And therefore the logic is you can teach only after you have learned. Therefore this rule applies. Therefore in understanding we say Shrutva Uktva, but we don't try to correct the mantra because it is Shruti only. And Medhavi, that person, Brahmaloke Mahiyate. Brahmaloka is Brahma Chaitanyam here. Mahiyate, he will be worshipped like Brahman. That person, he will be worshipped like Brahman. So this is the interpretation here. And I must note here, there is another interpretation also. So Nachiketam Karma, the Nachiketam Karma is to be understood instead of Nachiketas learnt. Supposing a person learns Nachiketam Karma, which is what the Virat Upasana in front of the fire, which was taught by Yamraj to Nachiketa as the boon, right? The second boon. So it's basically Vishwarupa meditation. And therefore, in that meditation, you have karma, which is the puja, and you have upasana, which is the meditation. Supposing a person does that, where will he go to? Will he attain moksha?
No. Swargaloka.
Brahmaloka.
He will go to Brahmaloka. So that is very careful about that. Swargaloka is kevala karma only. Only karma. When that karma is combined with upasana, which we say upasana karma samuchaya, the combination, then Brahmaloka he will go to. And therefore Brahmaloka mahiyate means he will go to Brahmaloka, he will get Vedantic teaching from Lord Brahmaji, and therefore he will get Krama Mukti. Okay, so two interpretations are there. One is Sadhyo Mukti, Jivan Mukti, and one is Krama Mukti, which is sequential. Sadhyo Mukti means in this life, on this earth itself, he gets Mukti. But Sadhyo Mukti, Krama Mukti means he first dies, goes to Brahmaloka, gets the knowledge, is a Jivan Mukta in Brahmaloka, and when Brahmaloka perishes at Pralayam, then he becomes Videha Mukta. Therefore, the seeker who has understood the first chapter of the Kathopanishad can either get Krama Mukti or Sadhyo Mukti. This is the glory of this Upanishad. Okay, now we look at the last verse. So he says, Yaha Shravayet Prayataha. So you have to look at Yaha, which is the first word. Shravayet is the 1, 2, 3, fifth word. And Prayataha is the first word of the next line. So Yaha Shravayet Prayataha. If a person understands and repeats Prayataha with purity, what does he repeat? Imam Paramam Guhyam. This supreme secret, if he repeats, where Brahma Samsadihi, in the presence of an assembly of Brahmins, Va Shraddhakale. So that Va Shraddhakale is in the second line. So he says, if a person repeats this whole Prathama Adhyaya, the first chapter, with a purity of mind, and this Prathama Adhyaya is called Imam Paramam Guhyam, the supreme divine secret. And he should repeat it where? Either in the assembly of Brahmins, knowledgeable people, Jnanis. So in the assembly of Brahmins, Brahma Samsiddhihi Va Shraddhakale, or at the time of Shraddh, the Shraddh ceremony for your ancestors who have died. When you do that, Tat Kalpate Anantaya that will bring about anantaya, infinite result. And tad anantaya kalpate, it definitely leads to a infinite result. Iti. Iti means this Prathama Adhyaya is ended. Okay. And the double repetition, tad anantaya kalpate, tad anantaya kalpata means that for emphasis and for saying that this particular chapter is now being concluded. So, yaha, if a person shravayet prayataha repeats with purity of mind this supreme secret in the assembly of Brahmins or at the time of Shraddh, then that repetition is conducive, will bring about an infinite result. And tad anantaya kalpate, again it is being repeated to give an emphasis, it will certainly lead to an infinite result. So Yamaraj here is saying that forget about understanding, studying in detail and understanding this particular first chapter. Even the reading of this first chapter is a great punya karma. So even a simple parayanam will produce huge amount of punyam. Parayanam of what? This great teaching and sacred teaching which took place between Lord Yama and Nachiketas. And prayataha means it can have the pure mind, it can mean after your bath also, after purification. Mind purification, body purification. Shravayet. So Shravayat can be taken as either reads, chants, or listens. So Shravayat can be both. If you listen to this, so not everybody may be able to chant. So at Shradakale, very often, most of us don't know, so we don't say anything. We just listen to somebody else chanting. Even that is sufficient. Brahma Samsiddhi means people who are jnanis or people who have got a lot of Shraddha. If you do that, then that Parayanam will lead to immense punyam. And that immense punyam, you know what it will lead to. It will lead to Chitta Shuddhi. Chitta Shuddhi will lead to Jnanam. Jnanam will lead to Moksha. Therefore, the first chapter is good for teaching. It is good for listening. It is good for reading also. Whichever way you look at it, you must be aware of the contents of the first chapter. With this, the Prathama Adhyaya is concluded. We'll stop for today. In case any questions are there, we can answer.
Acharya,
Yes, June.
could you please give again the translation of the 14th mantra?
Which mantra?
14.
14th mantra. So, Uttishta means arise. Jagrata means awake. Prapya Varan, having approached the wise people. Nibodhata. You have to supply Atma over there. Atma Nibodhata. Know the Atma. And Kavaya Vadanti Tat Path Durgam. Wise people say that path of Atma Jnanam is difficult to tread. Nishita Dhara Shurasya, just as the sharp edge of a razor, Duratyaya, is difficult to tread. So in short, in English, arise, awake, approach the jnanis, approach the great ones, and from them learn about the Atma. The wise declare, the jnanis declare that the path of Atma Jnanam is difficult to tread, just as the sharp edge of a razor is difficult to tread.
And could you give us again the Sanskrit terms for continuously changing and for changes?
Continuously
Eternally
changing,
changing and
apekshika
changeless.
nityam. Apekshika nityam is continuously changing. Apeksham really means relative. So here you have to take it as continuously changing. And for changing nityam, changing eternal. Other one is kuthastha nityam, changelessly eternal.
Thank you.
One is the mithyatvam of anatma and the other is the satyatvam of sat.
Yes.
Although even anatma, well, finally everything is atma, but you know,
Yes.
the transactional space, anything that is anatma,
Yeah.
it is constantly merely just changing form, either matter to matter or matter to energy, energy to energy, energy to matter, whatever combination.
Yeah.
But it is eternal in its changingness. That change is
Constantly changing. That is why three gunas are said to be constantly in motion.
And that which enables the change and that which enables its own existence, actually, that which its existence is dependent on,
Yeah.
the one that is eternally
Changeless.
unchanging.
So the eternally changeless is the very substratum of the eternally changing.
So Swami Vivekananda's arise, awake, and stop not till you reach the goal. That's
Yeah.
from here.
That's from here, but Swamiji used to use it in a different context because he was convinced that, if you have read his teachings, he was convinced that India needed more karma than jnana. So he would say that get up and, be active. Of course, his Raja Yoga is very good. His books are very good, but that was his general. He was not so oriented towards jnanam. Of course, he was a master, he was a jnani. But his idea about India was, let us shake them up, because he thought that because of this passive nature that Indians have, we are lagging behind, which is true to an extent actually. We accept everything without too much of struggle. Everything is God's will.
Yeah, that's why that controversial statement, it's better to play football than to read Bhagavad Gita.
That's what he said actually. Yeah.
Actually, about this, I started, it's supposed to be, a text funnily for children, but I went through the Hetopadesh. There's something called the Prastavana, the preface, so to speak, where there are these many very beautiful shlokas, which actually speak exactly about this, about the concept of prarabdha, but also the importance of effort. And it gives various analogies of why that, yes, that prarabdha is there, but until and unless the effort is not put in, then how that prarabdha will actually not really come to a complete fruition, which was really beautiful to see, where the scriptures themselves actually talk about not just resting on the past laurels, but actually doing something about it.
Yeah, in fact, that is what we talked about in chapter 2 and 3, that your prarabdha is only responsible for the current environment. How you handle it is your agami, it's your free will, sway ichha. So to say that, Vedanta encourages fatalistic approach is a complete misunderstanding of Vedanta, what Vedanta does. Vedanta says in every environment, there is something which you can't control. That is your prarabdha. But whatever you can control, you should definitely control it using free will. After that, after having utilized your 100% effort, then what comes? That is not in your control.
Actually, Vedanta is very, it's very fancy free, so to speak, it's kind of so simple, which is not attractive. Like you said, in a beauty contest, Maya will always win.
Maya will always win.
And I think it's that simplicity, this the razor's sharp edge and finding it difficult to walk on, is the simplicity of it, really.
Yeah.
Where there, it's not promising any kind of mystical experiences or in fact, it is saying that any experience is basically not you. And therefore, I think people find this path very difficult because actually it really is not.
Everybody wants an experience, I want to experience Brahman. So that's a lot of people say that, it is Shravanam is good, Maranam is good. Have you experienced Brahman? If not, what has happened? Nothing has happened. No change has taken place in your life. So that Samadhi Avastha, Yoga Sutras, they talk about experiencing Brahman.
Om Acharya.
Yeah.
So, what like it has to be studied under a teacher, I understand, but of late I've seen they especially comes to Hatha Yoga. A lot of teachers, pick up the books on their own. The other teachers who have written, especially Hatha Yoga Pradipika or Shiva Samhita and all. So they read on their own, like, and they understand that whether it is ahara niyama or the asanas or pranayama and then shatkarma. So even that study also has to be done under a teacher. I think it's very rare to find such teachers. So
No, you have teachers of Hatha Yoga very much. You have a lot of teachers of Hatha Yoga, but those who go by the texts also you got. The problem is that those who go to traditional schools for Hatha Yoga, they work on the postures only, and the theory part. I mean, every teacher, every good teacher talks about the theory, but most students don't retain that. But your purpose in going there is to become a Hatha Yoga teacher and earn a living, which really is not the whole purpose of the Shastra, right? If you look at it in terms of totality, the entire purpose of Hatha Yoga is to tell you that it is not a tool to give you moksha. It is to keep your body and mind fit, so you can sit for an hour in a Jnanam class.
okay, so you would say it is okay to study on our own.
I'm not saying it's okay to study on your own, because Sanskrit is very difficult to understand unless you have the contextual meanings.
Okay.
Contextual meanings, unless you know, you'll end up by making all sort of mistakes in your interpretations.
Yeah, because whenever I interact with many Hatha Yogi teachers, they have a very short lineage. Like, if you ask who is your teacher, then they'll say, my teacher is from so and so, and that teacher doesn't have, much bigger lineage.
So if you see Hatha Yoga Pratipika, the entire first one verse is the lineage. That entire verse itself talks about lineage. Parampara is given there. So if a
Yes.
Hatha Yoga teacher says that my teacher is only, let us say, B.K. Iyengar, he has not understood what the lineage is all about, or his teacher has not taught him.
Yeah, that's right.
The parampara is there. It is mentioned in every text.
Yes, I understand that the first, the second and first verse itself talks a lot.
Yeah.
But the connection of that which parampara, I think, we don't get. That's why I said, like, it's very rare to get the.
You don't get because most of the teachers don't acknowledge that parampara, or they don't want to acknowledge. They stop with their Asmad Acharaya. That is why we don't say that, right? We say up to the Asmad Acharya, including my Acharya, everybody else. Sadashiva Samarambha, beginning from Shiva.
Okay.
That acknowledgement has to be there. Otherwise, Hatha Yoga can be taught as simple physical exercise. Okay, it's no different from gymnastics. But then you are not teaching yoga.
So we need to actually look at the lineage then, like, where is that Hatha Yoga teacher coming from, and then what's the lineage? Because they don't say that, as you said, like, they will only accept that, like, my teacher is only Katha Vijay or like Krishnamacharya, and then we don't know the further lineage.
Yeah, it's okay. If the teacher is not taught, then what can you do?
Right. Thank you, sir.
Om Acharyaji, I have a question. When
Yes,
we're
Rinka.
speaking of the Sakshi or the witness,
Yeah.
we are essentially talking only of the OC,
No.
because it can be the RC also, which says that I am not this. So at the
That's a
intellect.
very, very big topic. What is the RC and what is the OC and what is the Sakshi?
So I
See,
was getting
Sakshi essentially refers to the OC, right? But the word Sakshi means witness. And therefore, it refers to the OC as obtaining in your body, which is not the RC. You get what I mean? That
No.
OC, which is the cause of the RC, is the Sakshi.
But then when we are speaking in terms of words, so when you use the word Sakshi or the witness, so we have to take it only as the OC or as
No,
the
you
RC?
don't take it as the OC. It is always to be related to a body. Because remember that when you say RC, it is not the RM and the OC that is, or RM and the RC that is present. The OC is also present. Whenever you say RC, there are three entities always present. One is the RM, one is the RC, and one is the OC. That OC in this combination of RM, OC, RM, OC and RC, that OC is Sakshi. Without the body, you cannot refer to Atma as Sakshi.
Okay.
It's a bit of a, concept which takes some time to understand. And we'll talk about this, but we'll talk about it in later chapters of Bhagavad Gita and maybe in the Upanishads.
All right. Thank you.
In fact, most of the senior students here took quite some time to understand what the Sakshi is.
Thank you.
Okay, so with this, we'll stop. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Vasishyate Om Shanti 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 Om Tat Sat Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you for your patience.
Acharya.
Thank you.